Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are going to be talking about a very interesting topic tonight. This topic received a tremendous amount of attention and discussion and development, and that is the ability of being able to use webcams and microphones in halacha. Can you ask them to just be a bit? Eve. So.
Are you disrupting?
Just too loud. There's on.
Do you want to put on Zoom? Is Ellen and Julia?
I don't know.
Oh, wow, so many people on. Hey guys. Hey. Okay, I'll tell everyone to.
Okay, so we want to know, can you fulfill a mitzvah via microphone? Can you fulfill a mitzvah via Zoom? Can you fulfill a mitzvah via cameras, FaceTime, Skype, telephone? Okay. So in essence, we have a number of subjects, because the truth is that there are different types of mitzvahs that you fulfill with different parts of your body. So give me a type of mitzvah, give me an example of a mitzvah that you fulfill through your eyesight.
Look at the tzitzis.
Do you make a bracha when you look at your tzitzis?
Davening.
You do. But when you put your talis on,
Do you say, I'm fulfilling the mitzvah of?
no, you say you wrap yourself on.
What do you say, Dr. Bob?
I said davening.
How do you fulfill a mitzvah with your eyes while you're davening?
By reading the prayers.
If a person is blind, do they fulfill the mitzvah of reading the prayers?
Yeah, but you're still using your eyesight to read the prayers.
Now, I understand you're using your eyesight, but is there a mitzvah that you actually fulfill through one's eyesight?
When you see a rainbow,
That you couldn't do any other way.
Correct. When you see a rainbow, I like that. So what happens?
you have to say a prayer.
See, right. So if I do not see the rainbow and my friend sees the rainbow, can I make the blessing?
No.
No.
How about the new moon?
The new moon. Very good.
Kiddush Levana?
Kiddush Levana. I don't see the new moon. Can I make the bracha? Can I make the bracha over the new moon?
No.
We have strong nose over here. Was that who else was the no? Was that Ben?
Less.
I don't. Oh, there you go. Okay. No. Fantastic. What about let's talk about a couple of other mitzvahs. What other mitzvahs are okay? Let's see. There we have eyesight. Okay. What about ears? What mitzvah do you fulfill with your ears?
Listening to the Megillah, the sound of the shofar.
Sound of the shofar, sound of the Megillah. I like that, because you actually when they blow the shofar, right? We say the blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem, lishmoa kol shofar. Blessed be Hashem for us, who has commanded us to hear the sound of the shofar. Okay, so it needs to hear the actual sound. What do you say?
Why isn't Shema Israel? Hear, oh Israel. Here.
Correct. You make a bracha when you say that.
Yeah, you whisper.
No. You're sharp. Lishma kol shofar, lishma kriyat Megillah. Al mikra Megillah. It's actually about the reading of the Megillah. Okay. What else do we have? Oh, smell. Basama. Okay. What else do you make? When do you make a basama? Havdalah. Any other time you make a basama?
Yeah, on Saturdays when there's not enough brachas, don't you make a bracha on that?
Anytime you come across a good smelling fruit, a good smelling bush, or a good smelling spice.
A lot of flour.
So there are three separate brachas. Bore mine besamim, types of smell. Bore ispe besamim, ispe is from when you have a branch or a bush, that has a good smell, myrtle, you make brachas with them. And bore hanoten reach tov lepirot, who gives a good smell to fruit. If you haven't used, so if one smells, experiences the smell, one needs to make a bracha. So there we have, you've got your smell. And then with one's mouth, how do you fulfill, what bracha, what would you fulfill with one's mouth?
Or you eat something, say a
You eat
bracha.
something. Any other things besides eating?
When you speak,
When you speak, what?
you're davening. I mean,
You make a bracha of the daven?
we make brachas while you're davening.
Yes, that's correct. Well, I was just going to adjust that. You make a bracha when you learn Torah, before you learn Torah,
Yeah.
right? And in thought, there's also brachas that we fulfill through thought. Okay, so tonight we're going to focus on, well, let's start with a very easy one that I think we can get everyone on the same page. If one were able, so what does jelly beans called?
Jelly bellies?
Jelly belly. What's the company? Big company.
Jolly belly.
Jelly
Belly-
bellies.
Jelly bellies. The headquarters are on the way down to California.
Well, Jelly bellies are headquartered in Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Actually, they use product that we
Big factory.
manufacture.
Say
They
again?
use our product. So if you've had jelly bellies, you've eaten our product.
And they got a hechsher, right, Les?
Say it again.
Do they have a hechsher?
Well, our stuff that we sell them does. It's Circle U.
Okay, so my question is, with regards to jelly bellies, okay, they have an amazing aroma, right? Okay, they can create the aroma of anything. Would you think? Would you say? Let's say it smells like a delicious, I don't know, grapefruit. You'd make a bracha. Let's say they're able to create a jelly belly that smells like an esrog. And you smell the jelly belly, would you make a bracha over that smell?
I think you could make a blessing for most things that bring joy if you connect them to the source. It's what qualifies to say Shehechianu.
Shehechianu is one bracha, but what we're specifically focusing on tonight is we're focusing on the blessing, for example, of the bracha that you would make when you smell an esrog. When you smell an esrog, you'd make hanoten reach tov lepirot. Blessed you God, the one who gives a good smell to fruit. Okay, would you make that bracha on a jelly belly?
No,
And that smells exactly like an esrog?
no.
No.
I don't think so.
Decisive no.
No.
No. Why not?
Because it's not the smell.
Because it's not the smell. What is it?
It's nothing there.
It is a smell.
Manufactured, it's not man-made.
It's
I mean, it's not, a natural smell. It's,
Divinely.
yeah, divinely made. It's manufactured.
It is a, what's the word? It is a fake. What's the
Artificial.
artificial? It is
Counterfeit.
an artificial smell. Fantastic. And we all agree, can I see heads? We all agree that you would not make a bracha on a jelly belly that smells exactly like an esrog. Yes, 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 yes. Everyone online?
Yep.
Fantastic. So on an artificial smell, you would not make a bracha on it. Okay? I'm just noting that we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 people all agree that you do not make a bracha on an artificial smell. So my friends, is there a difference between an artificial smell and an artificial sound?
An artificial sound, like some.
Oh, you tell me what's an
Like
artificial
an
sound.
electric guitar or something like that.
No, like
You're talking a recording. A record, a tape.
how about a phone? Does anyone understand how sound works? Me neither.
Something with waves.
Something with waves, exactly. Definitely, it's something with waves, right? But we all agree that when I speak to my mother on the phone, right?
You're such a good boy.
I wish I did it more often. Okay, we all agree that the sound that she hears is not my sound. It's an artificial produced sound. Yes, and the proof is that there are waves that the phone cannot produce. There are sounds that the phone cannot produce, and the sounds that from both ends. Higher certain frequencies, the phone cannot produce, higher or lower, right? It's not able to, right? So, are you able to fulfill a mitzvah with an artificial sound?
Well, if it's the same logic as the jelly belly, no.
If it's the same logic as the jelly belly, we all agree that the jelly belly, we all agree from the jelly belly that you cannot make a bracha of it.
But the difference
Artificial.
is.
I think I did such a great job in introducing tonight's class because
The difference is it's originally, the fruit was made by Hashem and the smell is natural. It's emanating from Hashem.
Yeah.
We're talking about a mitzvah that a man is doing. It's
Yeah.
not what Hashem is creating.
yes,
So I think that there could be a difference, that the sound, if you're doing a mitzvah you're teaching a class
Yeah.
over this, why isn't that a mitzvah?
I'm not saying it's not a mitzvah.
It doesn't
I'm
have
not
to be
saying it's
perfect.
not a mitzvah. I'm not saying it's not fulfilling the mitzvah of learning of Torah. But there's a certain, for example, the blowing of the shofar on Rosh Hashanah needs to be done on Rosh Hashanah, right? So can I go and get a recording and play it on my loudspeaker in my synagogue on Rosh Hashanah?
No.
No. Why not?
Electricity.
Okay. Let's add a non-Jew use it, do it. We'll agree that a recording is not good. Correct? We'd all agree that recording is a problem, right? So first of all, the one thing that I would like to distinguish between a jelly belly and so I would say a jelly belly and a recording would be the same. Because what we don't have in front of us is something live. You don't have a live esrog in front of you. You've got an artificial jelly belly. You don't have a live human being blowing the shofar in front of you. You've got a wave sound that has been recorded a month ago or a year ago, right? So we'd all agree that a recording would not work. Okay. So now the question would go, what about a live FaceTime?
Well,
Would that work? Would that help?
well, it's a very interesting thing because if you go back to COVID, when you would daven with 10 people online
Yeah.
via Zoom,
Yes.
we didn't think it was a minyan.
We didn't count it as a minion. We didn't.
But
take
there
out-
There are people who did count it as a minyan. Would say Kaddish over that, would consider
And
it a
still do.
minyan,
I acknowledge. Okay,
but we did not.
we did not. Correct.
So here's something that brings that stuff together.
Okay.
What you're talking about is the response, the feeling that it creates in the individual. So there's a big difference between hearing live music and hearing something that's been pre-recorded. It may be very, very difficult to distinguish the difference, but the knowledge that one is live and the other is virtual is enough to make a difference in the level of the significance of the importance. With odor, that is even further in that direction because it's very difficult to measure the elements of a particular odor. So you rely on the fact that it is the actual essence, the actual fruit itself, rather than some kind of imitation. And your knowledge becomes a part of performing that blessing.
I'm going to leave it at that. that last, I really lost you at the end. Unless you want to repeat it, the last 30 seconds, I really lost you. What I picked up is that you're saying that there's a difference with regards to the intensity of the fulfillment.
No, well, what I was saying was that the key element here is the way we respond as somebody who's in the presence of the odor, the sound, the visual thing that we're looking at. And the important part of that is it real? Is it physical? If it's virtual, then it loses its status as something that is worthy of a blessing.
Okay, I'm going to put this at. I'm going to strongly disagree with you, and I'm going to tell you that I'd like you to go and try out 3D goggles. And you put, I don't know if you've tried them. They put earphones on you. They put a screen over your face, and you are in a virtual the virtual reality. And what is unbelievable is in this virtual reality, your brain attaches itself to what it sees, and you know that you're in a virtual reality. And we went a couple of 2 years ago, we went and we did it for the kids, and then they were like, you have to try. You put this virtual reality goggles on, and then you're inside this city, and you go into a elevator, and you feel the elevator goes up 30 floors, and you walk out of the elevator, and there's a platform, and then you can do different things on the platform, but it's completely open, and you can see everything below you. And when you walk off that platform, you feel your heart jumps, you feel like you're falling. It's phenomenally intense, that experience. What they're able to create through a virtual reality is very intense. So I'm not going to, you know, and it's just a question of getting it more perfected, right? I mean, we're at the early stages of the development of virtual reality, very early stages, and the intensity of those experiences are very strong. So let's jump into some of the sources, and let's look at some of the stuff over here. Believe it or not, we actually have a Talmudic quote. We have a Gemara that talks about being able. Yeah, virtual reality. So, in order to, the Mishnah in Rosh Hashanah talks about giving testimony about the new moon. Okay, so it goes like this. If two people in the land of Israel, they saw the new moon on day 29, which would make the next day Rosh Chodesh instead of day 30, they were commanded, they had an obligation to go to the temple and to speak to the high court and say, last night we saw a new moon. And then based on their testimony, the Beis Din will establish that day as the first day of the new month. And because that will be the first day of the new month, then every day subsequently in the cycle of the year will be considered a day earlier. Okay, which means that if Yom Kippur would have been fallen out on October 5th, and they came and gave testimony about the month of Elul, they'll make Yom Kippur a day earlier, right?
Yes.
Okay, so testimony of a new moon in the land of Israel had immense repercussions, because the obligations of Yom Kippur is a Torah obligation. That's very serious. So the Gemara asks, what happens if you had two witnesses who saw a new moon reflected in the water? Is that considered sufficient sight, sufficient vision in order to be able to establish that this was a new moon? Gemara. Ra'inu b'mayim, ra'inu ba'ashashit, ra'inu ba'avim, ein me'idin alav. Our sages taught that if witnesses claim that we saw the new moon reflected in the water, or we saw the new moon reflected in a glass, or we saw it through the clouds, their testimony is not accepted. So a reflection of the new moon, or a, what's the word, when a blurry new moon is not sufficient. Okay, so the three things that the Gemara uses, 3 words. Number one, they saw a reflection in the water. So reflection. They saw it through a glass. What does a glass do? Refracts it. Okay, and then they saw it through the clouds. So what the clouds are doing is they're kind of blurring it. Okay, so their testimony is not accepted. Okay, so there are 2 options with regards to understanding why is the testimony not accepted. Why would you say that you cannot accept this testimony? If let's just use the reflection in the water. Okay, they saw a reflection in the water. We don't accept their testimony. Why not? What's the problem with the reflection in the water?
Well, in this day and age, someone could have a camera or whatever and be doing it themselves. It's fake.
You can have, right. So the one perspective is that the reason why it's not kosher, it's not counted as sufficient testimony, is because you cannot be 100% sure that you have the genuine moon. Seeing is believing. Cameras lie. Right? Seeing is believing. So we need actual sight. That's the first perspective. What's the other perspective that we would say that this is not considered good enough testimony? Seeing a reflection is not considered good enough testimony.
Can't the reflection distort? It may not be exactly an exact
Correct.
replication.
That would fall under that same category.
But what about the fact that it can be artificially created?
That's exactly what we say. That all, I agree that all falls under the category of that you need your sight. You cannot be 100% sure that what you're seeing in the reflection is the genuine, and that is why. Now I'm asking for an alternative perspective, why it would not be considered a good sight.
Theoretically, there couldn't be a reflection if you couldn't see the moon. It's physically impossible.
Say it again.
If there's no moon, you can't see the reflection of the moon.
Could be something else.
In other words, if you said, "Oh, I saw the reflection of the moon in the water," if you looked up, you'd see the moon. Because if you didn't see the moon, there would be no reflection.
That is very good. We're actually going to come and see that. Rabbi Hananel is actually going to talk about that. Rabbi Hananel actually says that the case where there was water in front of the witness and he notices the moon's reflection in it. However, when he looked up towards the sky, he could not find the moon, and that's why, right? Which meant that we're working from the perspective that the moon, that you need to be 100% sure. And if you don't see 100% sure, reflection is not sufficient, right? Okay, so the other perspective is that the Torah says, in order for you to see something from a Torah's perspective, you need to be able to see it with your eyes. That is called true sight. We'll call it Torah's true sight. It needs to be with the naked eye. Okay, if one doesn't have the naked eye, one is not able to use that reflection. I'm not sure what's the deal with glasses. I don't know.
I don't understand why the clouds are an issue. Because you could see,
Blurry.
if you could see a full moon and there's a cloud passing in front of it, it's not as bright as normal, but you could still tell it's a full moon.
But if you stand there long enough, the
In
cloud
order
is gonna
to
pass.
have a new moon, it's not a full moon, it's a sliver. It's the first sliver of the month. It's the
But
first.
I'm just saying, if you could see it through the cloud,
Mhm.
you could still see it. It may not be as bright, it may not be, but you could still see it.
Do you think it's sufficient?
It's kind of like taking a screen and putting it in front of it. If you look at that light and you put a screen in front of it, you can still tell that there's a light there.
So I don't think, I mean, my perspective is that there are torches that you can shine at the clouds, right? I see them in all over the place. When they have big events, they'll have torches shining at the clouds.
Right, but that's a reflection of off the cloud down. This is
Correct. So I'm
seen
asking,
through the cloud.
is it possible that when one sees something, that it could be an artificial light?
There, Rabbi, there are clouds and there are clouds. So you might be able to see through some cumulonimbus, very fluffy and transparent. And then there's, if the night is supposed to be Rosh Chodesh and there's storm clouds, you can't see through them.
So, okay, so I mean, I don't want to get sidetracked with this, but we'll just shelf it a little bit. That seeing it through the clouds is not sufficient. Is not sufficient, and we can go from two perspectives. We can go from a perspective that it's not necessarily you could be mistaken with regards to the vision, and also we could say that in order for you to give the testimony, you need to see it with your naked eye. Okay, so we need the Torah's perspective.
But then doesn't it throw off the calendar then, if it really is that day, but because it's cloudy, you can't see, so then now you're missing a day.
Correct. That is the greatness that the Torah has given to mankind. In that we get to define, individuals get to define when Rosh Chodesh is. It's a partnership.
What if they can't see it for 2 days?
No, so then it
Oh, then you
automatically is a
automatically put it to
maximum
the next
30.
day. Got it.
That's correct. Okay. So the question is now, if you are actually able to, if one is actually able to clarify that what you have over there is the true moon, what you have in the reflection is the true moon without necessarily seeing it with your naked eye, will that be considered having seen it? Can you fulfill the mitzvah with that? Right? So we have two perspectives. We had a perspective of the reason why it's not kosher, it's not sufficient by seeing a reflection is because it could be artificial. So let's use an alternative. What if you have two people that came to you and tell you, we're looking up. He's stuck in a box and he's looking down and he sees he's in a carriage. Here we go. He's in a carriage heading towards Jerusalem, and he looks in the lake and he sees the moon. And he's walking by two people and he said, do you see the moon? Because he can't look up. And they say, yes, there is the moon. So he knows, he has clarified, perhaps, right? Let's say through that, he has clarified that his vision is clear, that he has been able to clarify that that truly is the moon. Okay, will that be sufficient? So it's going to depend on how we explain why you're not allowed to give a testimony. If we go from the perspective of that, you can't 100% be 100% sure, then when you have two witnesses, from a halakhic perspective, two witnesses are sufficient to give testimony, right? So you've got two witnesses that clarify for you that that is the moon, then perhaps that's enough. If we go from the perspective that you need a Torah vision is only with the naked eye, then even if two people clarify for you, then it's still not going to be enough. Okay, good. Okay. So we will go through in a number of opinions over here, Rabbi Hananel and the Rambam, they both seem to pull to a certain side. Okay, so we're trying to define, is it because we need clarity, or is it that we need Torah eyesight, right? Clarity or Torah eyesight. So the Rabbi Hananel, he says the reason why it's possible, why it doesn't work, is because the person looked up and he could not find the moon. So therefore, he's not able to utilize, we know that is not the true moon, his reflection. So according to Rabbi Hananel, if you could clarify that this was the true moon, it seems that Rabbi Hananel would hold that would be sufficient. Yes? According to the Rambam, he says, Lefi shebechol elu, because in all of these cases, panim nidmeh lahem, the reflection seems to be, it just appears to be genuine to the witnesses. But it is not certain that this is actually the moon. Meaning it seems to be that the Rambam also says that we need clarity that you have the moon in front of you. Okay?
Rabbi,
Yeah.
was it the same two people who were responsible every month, or could
No,
it be two farmers from Minsk?
anyone in the land of Israel that could make it to Jerusalem had to travel, even on Shabbos. Even on Shabbos, they would travel to Israel, to Jerusalem, to clarify.
It's a long drive from Minsk.
It's a long drive from Minsk. Exactly.
Was there a cow there?
Was there?
You have to tell Rabbi that joke once.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so.
Now you got me all curious.
No, please spare yourself.
Okay, there's a very interesting chida over here. The chida asks a question, and he says that if a person sees someone else doing a sin through a mirror, is one able to testify about the sin's occurrence? Based on what we have seen so far, what do you think the chida answers? You'd say no. Because?
Not a true Torah sight. And you can see it with your own naked eye. Isn't that what we've been saying about other things? You have to see it yourself.
Well, according to the Rambam, you need to just clarify, right? According to the Rambam, he says the reason why it doesn't count. Remember also that what's interesting is that the Gemara is talking about a moon, right? So the moon is very far away, right? So what one is doing is a reflection of something that is very far away. What about a reflection of something that is very close? Would that be sufficient? Okay. So when someone sees a sinner, he says it shouldn't count. However, the Chida refutes this as proof, noting a difference between these two cases. As the Mepharsh explains, an image seen in water or reflected in glass cannot be identified with certainty, but a reflection seen in a mirror is clear and accurate beyond reasonable doubt. And the Chida, therefore, leaves open the possibility that seeing a clear reflection in a mirror might suffice for testimony against someone. Now, I mean, like, it's very funny, it's very interesting, you know, like when happens to be that when I went to buy, like, this was the furthest thing from this was not in my brain at all. And then I'm preparing.
Tell me Sarah Berg's telephone number and what does she, who's the person and what does she owe us?
So
How much is that?
I'm gonna move to, it's okay.
If she pays us $7.50,
Hold on. Yes.
2 weeks. And then what's the girl's name? Oh, what's her telephone numbers?
I got it. Don't worry.
What if you're sitting in a class, and the computer said?
I know how much is the money. But think about it. You know, it was not such a long time ago that Kyle Rittenhouse was acquitted of murder, right? In my opinion, from the little that I saw of the court case, there was
Fake news,
fake news.
fake news.
Fake news. No, it's funny. This was not in my brain. I was not thinking about this at all. But like when we went and bought the car, when we went to buy the car, the gentleman that sold us the car, he was selling it for his son, and he was like, you go all excited about Kenosha and politics and Kenosha. It's really a nice place, and just so sad what happened in Kenosha. I was like, I have no idea what happened in Kenosha. He was like, "Oh, you don't know what happened. And then he spoke about Kyle Rittenhouse. But think about it, like there was one point, in my opinion, where the defense brought out, they showed a screen, a grab of a screen of the moment that he shot the individual, and the individual had a gun pointed at him, right? And I think, I don't know, I'm open to hearing whether it's right or wrong. They clearly used that. That was like the clear defining testimony that his life was being threatened, and they were using that. They're grabbing a piece of a video in order to clarify the stance.
We're using body cams of police officers.
All the time,
I mean,
correct.
so it's accepted in an American court of law.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, this was like a world famous action of murder, right? Okay, so we've established, artificial. Okay, so let's get to, so when one sees another person or even an event through a live webcam stream, we see something that is complete, as a complete reflection, right? Is that correct? Would you agree?
I don't know if I can.
The technology is amazing, right? Because I mean, like nowadays, I mean, like you can have a mustache, you can have glasses, you can have everything added on to your, just give it to your grandkids and they will show you. They will dress you up. They'll make you cry while you're speaking. So is it a clear reflection? It's almost questionable now. I don't know, what would you guys say? Well, okay, let's look at, so Ramosha Feinstein, he passed away in 1986. So he was asked the famous question with regards to using a microphone to fulfill the mitzvah of reading of the Megillah. Okay, this is the famous letter of Ramosha Feinstein, where he went and did a whole bunch of research trying to understand how the microphone works. And the question was, are you taking, I think we all agree nowadays that you're not, but are you taking the sound wave and just increasing its volume? Or is it a regeneration of the sound, right?
What if you're sitting in a sanctuary
Yes.
and there's 4,000 people and you're sitting in the back row? So if they're davening, they're reading the Megillah, and you're in the back row, and there's no microphone, you're not going to be hearing it. You may be there. You may know that through your eyes that there's somebody supposedly reading the Megillah, but you're not hearing him. I mean, if you're at Marone and you're sitting with thousands of people and they don't have a microphone there, you're not really hearing the prayer.
Did you guys go to the Bells synagogue in Jerusalem? Did David ever tell you? take you
I'm not
to
sure.
the bells?
Where's the Bells?
Huge sanctuary, huge sanctuary.
In the old city?
No.
No, it's not the old city.
So Bells Synagogue. So Bells is a Hasidus.
Yeah,
Oh,
so the bells is
Okay.
like bells of Shiva or whatever.
Bells of Shiva.
That's the big white building they built.
Big,
Yeah, yeah,
beautiful
yeah, yeah.
square.
We passed by it.
You pass by it.
Yeah.
Okay, so that place is humongous. It's humongous. I think it's 5 stories. They have a balcony 5 stories high. Five stories of balcony.
I think we sent the one we worked with the outside
No.
balcony. Okay.
No.
Okay, and inside, I mean, I don't know how many people it can hold, but on each level of balcony there will be like the yeshiva katana. There's the older yeshiva and different levels of the balcony. But in the base medrash itself, in the actual synagogue, so I mean, like it's a square, it's a triangle, right? And along the 3 walls, the back 3 the side, 2 sides, and the back are the balconies going 5 stories high, and it's a huge building. You go there on Shabbos. I've davened more than once there on Shabbos. You walk in during davening, you cannot hear anyone. You cannot hear, there's this loud sound of 1,000 people davening out loud. Everyone's davening out loud, right? So how do they hear the chazan? Right? You know how they hear the chazan? Everyone's focused only on this. So they have this leather pillow, a massive leather pillow, huge, big leather pillow that is on the bimah, okay? And the Gadi, he's got this wooden, it's used to stir the massive soup, right? It's a massive wooden oar, right? And he whacks it. He whacks that leather pillow, he'll whack it. And when he whacks it, when he hits it, the noise is so deafening. Everyone stops. You hear it so loud. Everyone stops, and the chazan goes, and then everyone goes back on. It is an unbelievable sight. It is an unbelievable experience. If you ever do it, now you got me. It is so loud. Anyways, so this is not the first time that we come up with this concept of like you davening in huge shuls, and the question is, can you fulfill? So now someone's saying Kaddish, can one fulfill it? Oh, here we go. A tour of the main bells of synagogue. I have it, gentlemen. Hold on. Give me a second. That's what you're talking about.
That's
Yeah.
what I was saying. Yes, it was burned.
Right,
They rebuilt
they
it.
rebuilt it for like
Yeah.
20 years.
Here we go. The Churva.
Horva.
Horva.
Yeah. Okay. Show and tell, ladies and gentlemen. Here we go.
Of the Haggadah, which is at the side once again. So when there's 2 Sefer Torah, we should have the guys who read the second Sefer Torah with the back to the Sefer Torah, so it's to the side. This chair over here is being moved to our place. This is the Rebbe's chair. The Rebbe's chair is usually over here. Okay, now the guy who has the job of being the clapper, so it's a very, very important job.
The clapper.
This is not for any place we know where they're up to down, because everyone's dubbing loud. There's no way the acoustics can differentiate between his voice, the Baal Tefillah's voice, and the rest of the guys. So there's a guy in the front who raises his hand, and that's a sign for the person here to give a clap. So one clap like that is just like between one halakha next. If it's more serious, like before Kaddish, they'll be giving 3 claps. Good. Part one down, and the dog goes on for ages.
3 claps. Okay. There we have.
Try that on Shabbat.
Oh gosh. Did that work for everyone? Did everyone hear it? Yeah. Okay. The Bell's base method. Okay. Let's learn a bit of Ramosha Feinstein. Ramosha Feinstein is talking about microphone with regards to Kriyas HaMegillah. He says, according to what the scientists say, sound needs to travel in order to reach its destination. And there is a short delay between any sound, when any sound is pronounced and when it is heard. Nevertheless, Halacha views a normal sound heard as connected to the person who spoke it. So it's not 100% loud, right? For example, we're familiar that light travels faster than sound, and we'll see lightning, we'll hear thunder moments later or seconds later, right? So even though when someone is speaking, there is a delay. Halacha still attaches that travel, the sound that traveled, it connects it back to the original person. And so too, it is possible that sound generated by a person on a microphone while speaking is considered his actual voice as well. That was Ramosha Feinstein's initial idea. Hence, one should not protest against those who wish to hear the Megillah via a microphone or who fulfill either obligation via a microphone. So Ramosha Feinstein at the time was against the concept of saying that you should not fulfill the Megillah through a microphone. To leave them alone. Okay. Now, when
But as we turned on before.
let's say Megillah, reading Megillah, right? So I had on Purim first year, and so you guys had Purim in the parking. David and I were in touch, and I spoke to my Rabbi. Initially, I spoke to him, and I'd done my research. So I sent him my question before I didn't tell him what I saw. I prepared to make sure that my question was not a stupid question, right? So I read Ramosha Feinstein, and it sounded good. It sounded like this would be okay. And I sent it to him. I said, can I use a microphone? Can we get speakers and read Megillah through speakers? His answer was, no, you cannot rely on Ramosha Feinstein. Those are his words. Can't rely on Ramosha Feinstein. Those were his words. So then my answer, what I said back to him is, the situation in Portland we're taking very seriously. People were not getting out of, they're not walking around. The only way, people were not going to be hearing Megillah at all. They're not. They're full stop.
Rabbi, we're losing your sound. I am, at least.
You are losing my sound.
Yeah, I am.
When you lean back, I think you have to lean forward.
I need to lean forward.
Yeah. Don't relax while you're teaching.
Just be patient. The sound will travel. So I told my Rabbi, I said, like, these people are not going to hear the Megillah otherwise. If either. So he said, you know what? Oh, and I said, we're Sephardic. He knew that we were a Sephardic synagogue. He said, you can rely, because you're a Sephardic synagogue, you can rely on Rabbi Ovadia Yosef. So Rabbi Ovadia Yosef, he passed away before COVID. And there was a big gathering in Harnov, and he read the Megillah himself with the microphone. So he said it was okay. And that's what we had. We rented 8 massive speakers. We took out the parking lot of the JCC, and everyone parked the cars. And we rented a massive screen. It was like a blow-up screen, a projector that went onto the screen, and of course, Portland just started pouring.
The rain.
Pouring. It wasn't just rain, pouring.
It's just cold.
And we had a little hut. We had a little thing, but it calmed down. It calmed down, and we read Megillah Baruch Hashem. anyways, so that's our story of the microphone. So here, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, he says something very interesting at the end of his Teshuvah. At the end of his letter, he says something very interesting. However, since it is not totally clear that a microphone is actually considered an extension of one's voice, and since microphones are still a new technology, we should protest against those who attempt to fulfill obligations by a microphone just for the sake of being innovative. So Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was against the concept of a microphone for two perspectives. A, it's not clear, or was not clear at the time in the 70s, 60s, and 70s, that the microphone is a projection of a person's voice versus an artificial voice, not clear. And B, he said, we should be careful with regards to new technology. Since microphones are still a new technology, we should protest against those who attempt to fulfill obligations by microphones just because of being innovative. Because what can happen is one will say, oh, this seems to us to be X, Y, and Z. Let's be innovative. Let's integrate this into our system. And then you'd have a massive wave of people all trying to fulfill the mitzvah of whatever it is through the microphone. And then 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, scientists really explain that the way the microphone works is not a generation of a sound, but it is a recreation of a digital sound. And therefore, what happens is that everyone has not fulfilled the obligation. So he said one should be very careful of that. Okay, so it's very interesting what Moshe Feinstein. However, so according to Moshe Feinstein, according to some people, the question is, if a person has a hearing aid, should one turn up one's hearing aid, or should one rather go and stand next to the person who's reading the Megillah and take one's hearing aid out? Right? Make sense? So Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach, he ruled that the sound produced by a telephone or a microphone cannot be regarded as the original speaker's voice, and thus one cannot fulfill his obligations by listening via these instruments. Rabbi Chaim Jachter has observed that nowadays most halachic authorities follow Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach's view, generally viewing electronic sound as different from a real human voice, and hence prohibit the use of microphones and telephones for fulfilling halachic obligations. Another question, what about, right, it's one thing when you have the opportunity of hearing something live, but what about situations where you don't have the opportunity of hearing something live altogether? For example, people in the hospital, right, throughout COVID, right? Now, if we go and say, so the fear of Rav Moshe Feinstein was that we don't go and become innovative and not, we want to be careful with regards to how innovative we are and allow people to integrate these new technologies, right? But the question is, what about when we get into a situation, are we able to bend the rules in order to facilitate a little bit, or do we just say, forget about it? We're not going to bend the rules altogether, because you start bending the rules, you're never going to get back. How dare I say? And it's not news, but many synagogues or temples struggle to get their crowd back because they moved on to a Zoom format and no one's coming back. Right? What's the difference? If there is a difference, right? So we can hear that Shlomo Zalman's vision from that perspective. But what about, for example, someone who's in hospital, a woman who's in hospital and can't make Havdalah? Can they hear Havdalah over the telephone? Okay. So Rav Moshe Feinstein was asked whether or not a woman who is sick in the hospital can hear Havdalah over the phone. Rav Moshe Feinstein said, if she cannot hear Havdalah where she is, she should certainly try to listen to someone else's Havdalah over the phone, since I'm inclined to think that hearing over the phone is equivalent to hearing in person. His perspective was that it was good enough, right? And similarly, one should respond Amen. That's a big question. Do you answer Amen or not? He says one should respond Amen to a bracha heard over the phone or a microphone, out of doubt, since it very well may be considered hearing. So now what's interesting is that we're all going from the perspective of this sound, at least it sounds like Rabbi Moshe Feinstein is saying that what we have is we have a generation of sounds, I create a sound, and that wave travels, right? It travels and then it reaches that person. Now, what about if it travels and then goes through a filter and was regenerated and continues to travel? Is that considered good enough? Okay, Rav Kook, he also addressed the question of whether or not one should respond to Kedusha or Baruch heard live over telephone or radio. But Rav Moshe Feinstein, Rav Kook, ruled that one should indeed respond just as he would if he had heard it as if he had heard it directly. As proof, Rav Kook cites the Shulchan Aruch ruling that once 10 men are assembled together in one place, one may respond to their Kedusha even if he is situated very far away. For example, your question, and we've seen this, there is a Gemara that says that things at the end of Rosh Hashanah, I don't remember 100%, but they were talking that in Rome, there was a period where the Jews were thrived, did very well. And they had a massive shul where you could not, there was not a, it was massive, hundreds of thousands of people could daven there, and you couldn't hear the chazan at all. So how did they answer? They would hear the people answering Amen Yehei Shmei Rabbo, or Amen, and they would say Amen because they know that they're answering Amen because they were people in that. Okay, I mean, I hear on a regular basis, I listen to a shir, and it's in Israel, and he tries to make his bracha, he drinks water, he tries to make his bracha beforehand. 50% of the time he forgets, right? So he'll make the bracha, and he says, do not answer Amen if you're online. He makes the bracha, and some people. But according to Rav Kook, according to many people, it seems that one should answer Amen with that. Okay. How are we doing? Time-wise? 8:35. We have to tie it up. Rav Sheshes, he was blind. Okay, Rav Sheshes was blind. There was a rabbi in the group, and he noticed that everyone in the city was gathering to greet the king. The king was going to pass by. So now, what? Oh, he heard that everyone's going to see the king, right? When Obama came to Israel, or was it Obama that came to Israel? When Obama came to Israel, we went out to try and see the whole thing. What's it called? The motorcade, exactly. And the question was whether you could make a bracha over him in the motorcade. We didn't see him. We saw a lot of machine guns and a lot of vans. Okay, so Rav Sheshes, he noticed everyone in the city was gathered to greet a king who was passing through the city. So Rav Sheshes went along with him, and when the king walked by, when the king arrived, Rav Sheshes heard the king was passing by. Rav Sheshes made a bracha upon the king. They didn't see the king. Experienced. The question.
Rabbi, could you speak up a little bit, please, for those those of us on Zoom? Thanks.
So Rav Sheshes, he didn't see the king. He experienced the passing by of the king. So was that enough? So the Chida suggests that since Rav Sheshes, who was blind, he nevertheless recited a bracha over seeing a king. If the bracha could be recited without seeing the king at all, the Chida notes, then if one sees a king through a glass window, one should certainly recite a bracha, and that should be sufficient. Okay. So the question is, if you have the opportunity of seeing something, of fulfilling the mitzvah through an artificial mirror, through a video, is that sufficient if one's experiencing? Is that sufficient? Right? The Chida seems to say yes. Most of the halachic opinions are not into it. Not into it. There is a very interesting, relevant question that comes up, and it comes up on a regular basis. It comes up in numerous cases. For example, there is something called Chalav Yisrael, milk that was milked through the while it was being monitored by someone who's Jewish. Okay, that's called Chalav Yisrael. Double the price. In Chicago, it's much cheaper than it is in Portland. It's half the price than it was in Portland. But Chalav Yisrael is milk that was monitored by someone who's Jewish. And you use a camera to establish that this milk is called Chalav Yisrael. Okay? Is a camera sufficient? So I'll tell you, in Israel, and now, I mean, like now they have live feeds. In the old days, they didn't have live feeds. So what they actually used to do was the driver would drive the truck, he'd bring the videotape, the VHS, he'd bring the VHS of the milking, and if he brought the VHS, it was Chalav Yisrael. If you didn't bring the VHS, it would go into regulatory, right? It was a very interesting concept. So the question is that sufficient? According to most opinions nowadays, it is sufficient. Okay? According to most opinions nowadays, it is sufficient. With regards to cheese, by the way, it's very different. Cheese, you have to have a Jew putting in the rennet itself. And that's why we have this concept of kosher cheese. We're very careful about kosher cheese. With regards to the last point for today is with regards to yichud. So one is not permitted, one is not allowed to be locked in a room together with another female that is not one spouse. Okay? That one is family. The question: if there is a camera, is a camera sufficient for to permit a person to be secluded with someone with another? Okay, so let's just. It's important to just explain the background. If you're in a place, if one is in a place with regards to the halachas of yichud, the laws of yichud, seclusion means absolute seclusion. Okay, or locking the door, or seclusion where one's not expected to return, or where, for example, where a woman whose husband is in the town, is in the city, is permitted to be secluded with another individual, because there's this one takes the situation more seriously. Okay, both parties take the situation more seriously. So the question is it sufficient? Is a camera sufficient in order to avoid the laws of yichud? So many of the opinions allow that, permit it. However, there are unique situations where everyone agrees that it's prohibited. Okay, so there are situations where we call libo gas ba, in a situation where a person has a strong affinity to the other person. The male has an attraction to the other person. One needs to take a stronger stand so that nothing happens in this situation. Okay, and with that, we have a kind of a all-around a newer perspective with regards to how we deal with microphone and video. So with regards to if you hear a bracha or you hear someone doing a mitzvah over the microphone, I would say, at least in my opinion, according to Rabbi Gadi, Rabbi Shlomo Zalman, one is able to answer Amen to the bracha. Does one fulfill the mitzvah? It's questionable. It's really questionable. It's not clear. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein is leaning towards saying that you do fulfill it, but it's really questionable and doesn't like it because it's not sure how sound waves work. Oh, I wanted to read Rabbi Shlomo Miller, who's a current live Torah sage. He's against the concept of being able, can Kiddush Levana be said indoors by seeing the moon over the phone? So you got your friend outside with his FaceTime, with his live FaceTime, and you want to be able to fulfill that mitzvah. And he said, if not, can it be said over the phone? Did you mean reciting it for someone who has no access to a sitter? He's listening. Okay, but the reason, if you meant taking a picture on the moon on your phone and sending the image to someone who cannot see the moon where he is, the answer would also be no, since our sages said, since our sages did not establish the bracha when you cannot directly see and have benefit from the light of the moon. So you need to have actually see it live and have benefit from it in order to be able to fulfill that mitzvah. Okay,
All right.
so with that, I thank you all for joining us. Hopefully we'll
Thank you.
see you next week, Thursday. Wish
Thank
you all a
you.
good Shabbos.
Yes. Thank you.
Good Shabbos.
Shabbos.